Hello everyone. So I'm going to answer some questions because they've piled in I think they're mostly from the last upload. And I'll just start off also by saying that I have so many emails right now, and so if you've emailed me, it might take me a little bit of time to get back to you, because I need to find the time to do like a voice note, because I prefer to do that if I've got the time rather than type it out. So if you have emailed me, I will get back to you. It just might not be super quick. So let's do it. Okay, you're gonna have to bear with me a wee bit with this less than ideal setup. Okay, so JJ says, can you please do a video about how memories operate? We seem to wake up every day and operate based on memories, which apparently never happened. Is the purpose of memories to keep us from waking up? I'm very interested in this topic lately. I'm going to try and limit myself. In fact, forget that. We'll just do what happens. I can see myself ending up talking about individual questions for a while, but if we have to split it up, then so be it. So everything that's the known, everything that we know, everything is based on learning, or recall, or you could say memory. But there's something in experience you could either say it is unknown or a mystery, or it's known in a direct way, a way that doesn't require recall or memory. So I would describe it. You asked, are they there to prevent us from waking up? My answer to that would be nothing prevents you from waking up. There seem to be thoughts and beliefs and assumptions that obscure it, but ultimately that's not really happening. Ultimately, the substance of those thoughts and memories are non-dual nature, are what you are without limits. But there's a function happening in thought that performs this strange magic trick of seeming to obscure our true nature from ourself. And the known world exists in regards to this thought function as the content of the thought experience, what they are talking about or showing as an image or a memory in an objective way. These objective symbols, these projections of the known world, backward extrapolate the existence of a subject here who is apart from the objective experience. So I say this constantly. If you know my videos, these words I repeat in different ways, and it can either be the known. You can recall what I've said and know that as an objective thought in your experience. So as a conceptual model, it can be taken as, or it can be realised directly. In that, the objective content of the thought becomes secondary to its substance, what it's made of. Again, just another way of putting it. So this illusion is maintained by a relationship of my objective experience, which is a thought projection, and me, the subject, apart from it, which is supposed to be the subject, but really it's an object relating to other objects. That's the belief, that's the assumption. And it does this by moving attention away from the immediate, direct experience into a conceptual framework based in the content of thoughts. And it's always going to exist in, it doesn't know direct experience. Only what you truly are, so to speak, can know or does know direct experience, and it is that. This function of knowing based on the assumption of the knower operates through time, and it interprets everything and then brings that interpretation into a known world that is constructed by thought, and it projects those interpretations out onto the world, out into the future, to try and figure out kind of what's going on and how I relate to that. That's why we can encounter some intense fear stuff or existential terror and stuff like that, or helplessness or disorientation in this, because what this subject-object time-based function is a practicality, it's an interpretation, it's something that is applied as a tool to operate in the known world. It's a function. It's functional. It serves a practical purpose. What happens is, from the felt real position of the knower, the one in the centre, this energetic importance, this belief builds up that kind of takes on a life of its own. And rather than it being clear that this is just a thought function, this is just an interpretation, this isn't fundamentally real, rather than that being clear, it's the belief in it. It becomes heavy, it becomes important, and then that whole internal world ends up being mistaken as an accurate interpretation of the real, or what this is. And that's where the discomfort comes from, that's where the ignorance comes from, or the unsatisfactoriness, because we're living life through a mental interpretation of life. You can explore this in your experience by becoming attentive to the energetic signature of when there is a thought about past or future, what's being felt with it. What is the emotion or the energetic flavour of that? Is there a nervousness in that? Is there a heaviness in it? Is there a dissatisfaction in it, this energetic flavour of suffering, of existing as something which isn't essentially real. It's very important to get in touch with that, and a lot of that ends up being for a lot of seekers is that felt importance, that felt to be real struggle really ends up being applied to awakening, or trying to discern a conceptual, knowable understanding of what this is, what this awakening thing is. Subject, object, past and future. I got it, I lost it, I've not got it yet, I'm gonna get it, and I'm gonna experience it as a distinct experience. Another thing I say all the time, and I'll tell you this again, I'll just keep saying it, is that it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. It's here already. Something, that thought function unhappens. It thins out and slows down and stops. And then your true nature inherent shines through. And it's always here. Okay, so to break this, right? Sorry, 2 seconds. Alright, I'm back and it's night time now. I had an emergency to deal with, but it's all good now. It's all good now. So, so I was talking about earlier on today. I did rewatch the last bit of the video, but now I can't remember what the fuck I was talking about. Time, I think. Memory, time. So I think I was about to describe the how to experience a thought directly, and how to let's say develop an awareness, so to speak, of the difference between the direct experience of thought or thinking, which always appears in immediacy, always appears now, is always the one thought, is only one thought, such that there aren't multiple thoughts. You could say it's merely thinkingness or consciousness, and then the content suggested in that thought, which is only really potent or important or heavy or has gravity or reality when we assume and abide in the position of the subject, who that thought is happening to. Then it creates this whole timeline, this narrative, this real past, real future, and an overlooking of direct experience, including the thought. So a thought appears, it says, I'm worried about this in the future, or it appears, it says something like, why am I not awake yet? But that very thought itself, its substance, what it's made from, you could call it awareness, knowingness, consciousness. That experience of thinking is the very awakeness that it's talking about in the content of the thought that it thinks is not here yet. So what the key in this is that the felt reality of the subject, who that thought refers back to. Because when you look, it's not here, it's only suggested in the content of the thought. The thought's just talking about it in a way that assumes that it's here. But all there is thought. You're not going to find that separate me, that subject, that thinker. So I can't really tell you anything about, like what were we talking about? Was it memory or learning or memory or recall or something like that? I can't really tell you anything about that in the conceptual sense, but I can point to what makes that feel real, and it's all back towards me, the subject. That's the important part. Someone mentioned this in the comments, and this just it continues to happen. It continues to happen, and that's fine. That's just what's happening. But the danger with this, especially with someone like me, with the mind that I have and the inclination towards language that I have, is that this will be taken conceptually, and again we'll assume that subjective position, and then we'll relate to what I'm saying as a concept in whatever way from a point of view, reifying the concept as I'm actually talking about some objective reality that exists, but I'm not. I'm talking about what doesn't exist, what the experience actually is directly. And the key is the subject. The key is the felt reality of the me that's here, thinking about my past and future, projecting forward based on recall and memory, an imagined future, and recalling back an inaccurate version of what I think happened. Whereas all there is this. All there is what's immediately here. That's it, including the thought. So it kind of seems like this car's freezing. It seems like we're getting away from this, including the thought, the experience, the mystery of thinking. We're getting away from our true nature. We're avoiding it, in a sense, actively, by creating a past and a future to move backwards and forwards away from here. And if you pay attention to the experience of that, right, let's make this practical and direct now. When a thought appears, recognize what it's talking about. And you might recognize this when you snap out of the identification with that. You're thinking there's a narrative, you go along with it out of habit. Feels like me thinking, relating to something real. And then you just recognize, am I way into thought right now? And with that, there's an expansion. It's almost like, for me, it felt like I was way up and back into this thought space. I was deadening my experience, or dissociating from my immediate experience, including the experience of thinking, into this kind of well-worn and habitual self-referential narrative type thing. And the focus was always on something that is not here, something that's not this, something at a different time or somewhere else, or various things. But the important thing was what was happening in my direct experience. I seemed to be moving away from this into this weird ghost realm of thought, this kind of vague, like wishy-washy unreal space of thinkingness. And it was kind of like, that's why I like the term waking up, because it feels like you wake up out of a dream of thought back into reality being this, the visceral, physical, immediate experience of beingness. That also includes the thought, but the direct experience of thought, not what the thought is talking about. The thing is, it seems like you can't experience the thought directly when you hold a position as the subject relating to the thought. So there's this kind of feeling of relational aspect, like I relate to my thoughts, I relate to my past, my future, my beliefs, so on. I relate to something called awakening. There's a I mention this word a lot, an energetic signature a felt flavour of experiential flavour to that. You can feel it. Feels like me. It feels like me relating to a real experience that I'm having. But the identity is generated in that by abiding in a position that doesn't exist, as the central agent who is in control of my thoughts, who is relating to my experience as something separate. There's a distance in that. There's a huge assumption in that when it clarifies that that position isn't there, all there is thought. It's just laughable how obvious it is, how it's clearly, it just was never here. It was just an assumption, a suggestion, constantly referred back to, seemingly, but never directly looked at. And the context and the content of what the thought was talking about, the way it was talking, the way it was assuming, this function of me apart from my thought experience as the thinker. And then the time seems to be generated by again, abiding in that position that is constantly here, that watches thoughts come and go. And it can only do that as a thing that exists here as a static across a timeline. It's quite weird to explain this, right? But again, we'll get practical with it. So when a thought appears, recognize the content of that thought, what it's talking about. You might snap out of it, and it comes into focus in a different way. There's a when it's recognized as a thought, the content of that thought loses its reality a bit. It loses its definition and solidity as something real that I need to relate to, that's actually happening. And it's just a thought. In that, it becomes quite neutral. There's a neutrality to it. It loses its importance, it loses its heaviness. What comes into focus is the experience of thinking directly. The quality, the substance of the thinking experience as it's happening now. And then when this happens, or now if you want, you can just wait for the next thought. What will be the next thought? In that gap, in that openness, wait for the next thought. As soon as the thought appears, become interested in its substance. What is the experience of thinking? And what am I that's aware of that? Is it here? Is it apart from the thought? If I get direct with the thought that's appearing now, does the thought come and go? Are there distinct thoughts? Is there one thought, then another, then another? Or is there just thinking? Does it come in a sequence, like a conveyor belt, with gaps in the middle, with distinct thoughts? What is the experience? What is it like? There will be an effort to try and frame that from a subjective position, but when we're direct with the thoughts, it kind of breaks that ability. So is it, thought substance moving and fluxing and changing like a shape-shifting singularity? I don't know. Is it like wave fluctuations in the substance of thinkingness or consciousness? Is it like a different images appearing, like a frame by frame movie projector? Or is it one image that is gradually changing? Is it in language? I don't know how it will be for you, but I'm just pointing to the experience of thinking, not the substance of the thinking experience, what that is, what that's like directly, not what the thought is talking about, not the objective content of the thought. That's only important as the subject, as the separate me, as the thinker. So as we get closer to this experience of thinking, this self-knowing, conscious thought experience, explore its qualities, and then explore, what am I that's here that seems to be apart from that? Am I occupying or abiding in a position of the one thinking, the one aware of my thoughts? Where is that? Can it be found in experience? What is in the experience? Can you notice that the thought is talking as though something has assumed its own existence here? It's referring back to something. Is that thing here? Is that me here? When it's not constantly assumed to be here as an always here static thing that exists across this kind of narrative landscape, what you're asking in this question clarifies, but I can't really say much about it because, again, that would be a description, a model, appearing as the substance of what's realised, secondary to what's realised as the inherent quality of this experience. So it's almost like the more vague and unsatisfying my answer in the conceptual sense, with this sort of inquiry, the better. You know, a lot of the stuff that I talk about, it's difficult now because there are so many of you here, and there is, you know, such clarity, but there is also, some of you might feel it's not clear, and then not to categorize people, but however you want to frame that, like, you know, different stages in this awakening thing, it's kind of difficult to speak in a way that's applicable to everyone's, you know, what you're inquiring into currently, or you know, what the fixation is currently. That's why it's really helpful to answer questions. But a lot of the time I'll just assume that there isn't a conceptual fixation there, so then I'm free to use concepts and it not be important what I'm saying, in terms of getting fixated on it. And then other times there might be the risk of it becoming a fixation, so I need to approach it in a slightly different way. So just to keep that in mind, if, you know, what I'm saying is becoming confusing in the conceptual sense, just disregard it. If you can feel what I'm talking about, if you can notice what I'm talking about in your experience directly, all the way, then that's where it's at. So, okay, I think we might have to split this up. We'll see. Okay, where are we at? Okay. So, Son of Nature asks, can what you're pointing to be understood this way? When I close my eyes, there is an assumption that wherever I was experiencing before closing my eyes is still there, and that it's always there, leading to the belief that there is a permanence of the experienced while not experiencing. Yeah, so the same thing in what I was talking about, this abiding position as a subject. When we close our eyes and we really direct our attention into the thought experience, there is a thought experience, and then in that we're looking for, what am I that feels like it's the subject, the center point, the one thing that's consistently and commonly here, beholding this experience, somehow in control of it, the context that it all relates back to as the central separate self. And then we open the eyes, and this is when I talk about an augmented reality, like what we see as the world is an unknowable appearance with a knowable framework, a knowable symbolic framework augmented onto the mystery of the sense, in this case the visual sense. This is the way that you're investigating this here is intuitively very good, because you can observe that augmented reality. There almost has to be a kind of distinction there at some point. It seems like that ultimately there isn't a distinction anywhere at all, but we kind of go through this distinct phase of almost separating out what is a thought and what is not. And the way you're describing this here is a very good way to do it, because I have a apparent external three-dimensional, again, car park in front of me here, and it looks like I know what this is. I'm the always here subject, and that's the always there external world. It's inherent, I'm inherent. It doesn't change, it stays there even when I'm not perceiving it. It's there inherently for when I return to perceive it again. The assumption there is that I'm the always here stable subject that's moving through this external environment. These are mutually dependent duality going on here. But then when I close my eyes, it's just not there anymore. So I'm not observing the visual appearance anymore. The only way I can know that now is by exploring this thought augmentation that I was using to make that appearance knowable to me, the subject. So then this time when I open my eyes, there can be like a delay in this augmentation, and it's usually more potent when you look at something you've never looked at before. So I turn my head. Right now I've got this map here that just kind of runs automatically of where I am, what I'm going to be looking at when I open my eyes. So becoming aware of that, and then again when I open my eyes, there will be like a delay there where it's quick, but you see the non-dual appearance so to speak. You see the non-dual nature of the sense experience, the visual field, appears out of nothing as a unified singularity, as a non-dual single scene, single seeing, single image. And then the mind almost instantly augments a three-dimensional interpretation, a map onto it of what's this, I know that, I know this, all objects, this perceptual function. From me, the assumption of an object, subject here, to the objects out there in space in between. There's a delay there, so you can it's a bit, I would describe it, when I was doing this, it was spooky, because I found it quite freakish, because I'd never really looked this way. It was always the known, and I was looking straight into the unknown. It was kind of spooky, and it kind of creeped me out a bit for a while. But yeah, I opened the eyes, and then the known appears almost instantly. This thought function kicks in and augments a three-dimensional external world onto the raw sense perception. So then we do the same thing again, but this time closing the eyes, but this time we're going to hold exactly what I'm looking at as the external world. I'm going to hold that image, that augmentation in my mind, and I'm going to, you see, this one's clearer, but when you close your eyes, you'll see a tracer of what I was just looking at as an external world being there for a little bit, before it kind of, you seem to forget. Or if someone's very good at visualization, I might not be that good at this. They might be able to hold that augmentation, that image of the external world in their mind, quite in high definition maybe. And my wife describes things like this to me, of how she can visualize things, and it's like sometimes I think she's making it up, because but she's not, because it sounds like it's not what her mind has. Much more of a visual power or definition than mine does. But for me, if I focus on it, it'll be there, and then it kind of fades away. And I can when you recall it, right, it's nothing like the tracer that was left behind. If you were trying to, like, for me it isn't anyway, put it back together in your mind. So close your eyes, observe the augmentation being there, and then maybe fading away, which for me is very, very quick. And then before you open your eyes, reconstruct that visual image as a three-dimensional external world in as high definition as you can, and then open your eyes again and see what the difference is. Explore that, see what's happening there. But now we're kind of drawing a distinction. We're turning our awareness to what the mind's saying about and augmenting onto the appearance, the visual sense. And that's the only way it can make it look like, I know this, I know what that is. There are inherent objects out there that I'm sure I know what they are, and they're not that interesting because it's just inert matter. When you play about with this, you start to see what's actually there, which you can't describe at all. The mind can't even think about. It's like it's not even in the same. It's much more real than the augmentation, if you're to use real and unreal. It's much more obvious, but we mistake the augmented reality for what's actually there. But it's like masterfully, seamlessly being projected out onto what we're looking at. It's like, that's why it's not distinct. That's why the augmentation isn't distinct from the actual non-dual sense experience, because nothing's a duality, really. It's the filter of the mind, how it functions in and as this experience of an individual body moving through an external environment. But that's not the essence of what's happening. That's not the essence of what this is. That doesn't stop. The augmentation doesn't stop. It can stop, but it doesn't stop and then you're never able to know the apparent external world. It's just a thought function. Its reality stops. That's what stops. And that codependently collapses with the reality of the subject here looking at it, that knows it. And all of that is accumulated through conditioning, through memory and learning, recall. All of it's learned. In a way, we're unlearning everything we know so that we can see the most simplistic experience, the most simplistic and direct, immediate experience. Not all these steps that are added through mind. Should have probably said this at the start, but if this seems really obscure to you, or you're like, what are you talking about, or I just can't get my head around this, don't forget about it, because we're talking about a kind of deeper, more simplistic stage of this, or layer of thought and mind that's different in a way from the constantly rolling narrative that plays in the head that all relates back to me, the self-talk, that first layer of identity. This is kind of like a deeper layer upon which that first layer, the solid experience of a separate me, is built up, and these are deeply held beliefs, assumptions about the nature of reality and experience that are so taken for granted. They're learned, they're learned, and then they're reinforced through the way we live in this world, that we never really look there. But all we need to do is start exploring it, start getting curious. Is what is this? What is this? You hear non-dual speakers say that, there is no world, there is no self. And then you're like, can I intuitively, part of me can feel that what that's pointing to, not as a specific experience or an objective reality, but there's something here that it's not knowable, but it can be clear experientially. It can, and this generally takes a bit of practice and exploration. And when it's fun, it clarifies quicker. When we're struggling to perceive something we're not perceiving, that's a distraction. So if it sounds to you like I'm describing an experience you're not having, or I'm trying to or you feel inclined to try and perceive something you're not perceiving, that you kind of maybe think you know what it is, then that's missing it. What I'm talking about is your experience right now, without the additional layers of thought being added to it. And you'll know the layers of thought because it's knowable. It's like, I look at a car, that's a car, I know what that is. I know what its components are. I know what colour it is. I know how far away it is from me. I know that I'm here, that's over there. I know it's distinct from its surroundings. That's all the known. What I'm talking about was none of that. Again, this is my favourite part of this to point to and talk about, because it's incredible. This will become the most fascinating and captivating hobby you can get into when it starts to clarify what I'm talking about here. It's the most incredible, miraculous, mysterious thing that there is, because it's not a thing. It's like past the limits of the mind. So you're exploring the visual field. You're exploring attention, like we talked about in the previous video or another video. Like this direction of attention that's shooting out from what feels like I am to things over there. It seems like I'm only aware of one object at a time. I can relate to and know and think about one object at a time. So then we explore what's going on there, expand this out to the peripherals. Is there a limit to this seeing, the scene? Are there boundaries to it? Up, down, left, right? Like, where is its circumference? Where does it start and stop? Is that even there? Where do I start looking from? Where is the point that I begin, or my looking begins here? Is there one? Am I shooting my seeing out of a clearly defined starting point in the eyeball? Is that the experience? Where does the awareness start and stop? Where does the form that I'm aware of start and stop? Like this. Is there a boundary? Is there a start and stop point that can be perceived? Breaking it all down. When you don't find it, an assumption loses some of its reality, and then you keep looking and you keep not finding it. It loses its reality. I realise I don't think I answered your question. So you were talking about impermanence, I think. So when you close your eyes, the appearance is gone. Through memory, recall, I know that when I open my eyes, it's there. It was consistently there when my eyes were closed. Get as immediate as you can with what's directly happening now. Notice there's a leaning back out of this to an observer position. It feels like it's here throughout this practice that I'm doing, that's relating to it at a distance. It feels like it's consistently here holding this position. See if that's actually consistently there. That's the thing that feels like it needs to comprehend, analyse and know. Is the world actually there when I close my eyes, or is it gone? That question, that's not a question that can be answered in that way, but that lean back to the position of the perceiver makes it seem as though that's important, but it's not. What's important is the direct experience with this, without that interpretive faculty that feels like it needs to consistently be here to figure this out, or to wake up, or to know what's going on. Should probably get moving through these comments. So yeah, let me know if that's clear or not, because like we were talking about there, sometimes I feel like I might be giving too much. There's nothing wrong with concepts. We can only resist concepts if we identify with them. If you're clear on what pointing is, then it's not a problem. But let me know if I'm giving too many. I'm talking about this as a model, a conceptual model, too much, or if you prefer the just pointing into experience, a kind of guided inquiry type thing, or both. Or just let me know, because I'm never really that sure. But with the direct pointing, or the guided inquiry ones I did, people seem to get a lot from that. So I'm starting to think maybe lean into that direction a wee bit. I just like talking about it. So So Bella says, I'm still stuck in that final illusion. I can clearly see that the world is appearing within me, but this awareness still feels like personal centre. I can only hope, sorry, that's all I've got at the comment. So talking about awareness, the title of the video was Awareness Isn't Real or Doesn't Exist, and that points to something very specific. If you feel stuck, then why do you feel stuck? Maybe you're more in touch with that aspect of yourself that doesn't ever move. That's how it was for me. There was a, feeling like I have to move towards something, and then feeling like there was a subtle something else that was somehow more enticing than what's here. There's a kind of restlessness to it, a kind of undertow feeling of discontentment to it, and a kind of unrest to it. That final illusion, you've described it really well. There's a something elseness to it. There's a suggestion subtly that there's something else here, that this isn't it. This isn't simply it. Very subtle. And it takes the form of, like I said before, like awareness. The background. A substratum into which all appearance disappears and then is born from. A nothing, a void where I reside. I'm abiding in this emptiness. These all point to something that doesn't exist in experience. And the tendency of the mind is to reify that into because there's a gap there. There's a place there where identity can be subtly reified as a something inherently existing, giving this all context. And there is a subtle aversion from manifestation. There is a subtle leaning back and holding, a consistency to something being here as the perceiver, or the suggestion is it's always here, but it's not. I think the really enjoying the awakeness that you described, the one mind, the infinite subject, that kind of non-dual clarity that you're talking about, really enjoying what's appearing in and as that, such that this overarching context or container fades out, and there can be a noticing that it's just not there all the time. It's a context. It's like a grand overarching, it was for me, there was a containedness to it which felt intimate and close, like this is all appearing within my mind, this is my dream type thing, and everyone else is me as well. It's a beautiful realization. And there's a containedness to it. There's like a coziness to it. But yeah, there's a containedness to it. The context suggested in it that you can. There's a felt that might appear like a feeling of unity. There's a dimensionality, if that's even a word, to it. There's like a size and shape to it type thing. It's in some way, even though it's not perceivable because it feels like what you are, it's in some way tangible, some way knowable. I think that's kind of the best I can point to it, and how it feels, and how that feels. But getting whatever is appearing as this infinite awareness or whatever, its manifestation, its appearance, like leaning into that, getting closer to that right here in immediacy, not holding this in awareness in a kind of total way, but letting go completely into that just as it is. And this is the way it was for me, right? There was this overarchingness, this container, or this dreamer's mind. It had this effect of projecting its existence out somewhere that wasn't clear. It wasn't clear where or what that was, but it was here. I felt it was here. It had like an emotional narrative to it. It had a feeling tone. It had flavours to it in this context, in this kind of story. It had like a deep emotional story to it. But it projected itself out in a grand way to contain all appearance. But there was an out there to this, an out there-ness to it. There was a something elseness to it that was being overlooked, and it was directing attention away and up somewhere else, but not here, where that nothing appears to be in the center point in the sense experience. So it projected out behind manifestation, but it was really, I had to look back here. I had to look straight back towards this nothing, this void where I appear to be looking from, and see, is there a division there in immediacy, by getting in touch with the just the sense, just the visual sense. So it had this sneaky trick of projecting this inherent existence out onto sense experience, but in doing that, it was moving attention in a way away from where I felt like I was as a center point, as a one here behind the eyes in this space somehow. And there might be a specific sense where this is clearer than other senses that you can kind of intuitively find your way towards, and use that to get fully in touch, such that there's no separateness at all with this sensory appearance, this sense experience. For me, it clarified first in the visual sense. It could be the sound. Like, where is the me in that? Where is the here in that? Where is the awareness in that? Aware of the sound? What does awareness even mean? Is there a vague idea here? Awareness, of course, is just a word, but is there a vague idea? Awareness might not be the one, but knowingness, beingness, I amness, or, mind, or whatever. It's not even a word. Like it's like a feeling, like an idea feeling that's here. But it's here because it feels like what this is. Like, what is that? Explore that. Where is it? Is it here all the time? Does it recognize itself? What happens when it's not recognizing itself as a thing, as something? I think this is when the felt sense is important, because we go towards, we explore what that feels like, what it feels like to be something here, even like a universal consciousness or a mind or awareness. What it feels like to be awareness. What it feels like to be that here. What it feels like to have to be something that does exist, that exists, that's inherent, that's always here. What if I was to say non-existence? Non-existence. Is there a resistance to that? Is there a resistance to nothingness? Is this only something that can resist nothing? What is this where something and nothing don't apply? Existence and non-existence don't need to be discerned. Those ideas aren't relevant. What's too simple for all that? So let me know if you kind of are feeling what I'm talking about. It's a subtle thing, so it's very difficult to point to that. It's very difficult to point to that in a way that it's not it doesn't require you to intuitively feel it out, feel into it, intuitively open up to what experience is, what this is as it is. It's kind of just like gently moving that intuition along in the direction that it's going anyway, and then you kind of feel with me what I'm talking about, what I'm pointing to, because I can feel it now. If you can kind of feel it with me, not in the words, not in the descriptions, but in very subtly and very directly what I'm pointing to as this final illusion, as this, subtle addition to simply what is. This subtle suggestion of a something else. Anyway, I think I'm going to have to finish for now, but yeah, just let me know if that's relevant for you. I'm not really that sure sometimes when I'm talking about the really subtle stuff. If it's clear or not, but you can let me know. Just let me know. And I'll talk to you next time.